Welcome into another edition of the FutureSox RoundUp. I am super excited for this episode today. We have a loaded episode. I'm Elijah Evans, joined by my co-host Jeff Cohen, and we have guest Steve Hasman today of FutureSox, one of our contributors, works on all of our minor league content, absolutely crushes it with trending on the farm and everything along those lines. Before we dive into all the content we have today, welcome in, Steve. How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Good. Nice to have you.
Yeah, all is good. We're excited. This is a fun time. Today's episode is going to be kind of loaded with a lot of stuff. We're focused on the month of May. The month of May was a really exciting month for the White Sox farm system. The focus of today's episode is going to be on our hitters of the month and our pitchers of the month, just all of our players that really showed out in May, kind of increased their prospect pedigree and just showed us things that we hadn't necessarily seen before or continued doing things they were already doing great in April. Really just a fun time to look back at the last month of minor league baseball with all the teams in action. The ACL kicked off in May. Everybody got rolling. Kannapolis with one of the best months of minor league baseball we have seen in a long time from any level. Really just an awesome month, and we're going to kind of dive into everything today. First off the top, we're going to talk about a few small segments here. We're going to break down a few promotions that just happened recently. Just Baseball's Top 100 released this morning, so I want to mention the 5 White Sox briefly that made that list. And then we're going to get into all of our players of the month, as well as some other news from around the system. So we got a lot to talk about today, guys. We'll open it up with this. This was the first list. Shout out to my guy Arm Layton, who kills it with top 100s. A little bit of homerism here from me, being a Just Baseball guy, but he really puts a ton of effort into the top 100s every time. 5 White Sox in the top 66, fellas. That is something I haven't quite seen yet. I mean, these are 5 guys that have been on top 100s, but really cool to see those 5 guys make the list. So starting with Colson Montgomery, obviously at number 17 overall. Noah Schultz skyrockets up to 32. He was on the initial list this season. I believe he was in the 60s. Now 32 after what we've seen from him this year. Drew Thorpe goes up to 43. Jairo Iriarte, who was already on the Just Baseball list to start the season, jumps all the way to 52. And then Edgar Carroll remains pretty consistent around the 66 mark. What do you guys think about kind of those 5 guys being ranked as highly as they are, and especially Schultz jumping up a lot and Iriarte jumping up a lot as well? I'll start it with you, Jeff.
Well, it's interesting. I think as awful as the White Sox are, sometimes I think people who listen to our podcast must think we're crazy to be so enthusiastic about so many players. But, when we go through the whole month of May, there are tons of guys who were top performers, and especially these 5 guys. My only reaction is, other than being really enthused that people around the country are recognizing what we've seen, some really talented players, I'm wondering if almost Montgomery and Schultz positions should be reversed.
Steve, I'll let you take that statement there.
That was Jeff was on. We were thinking on the same line here, because I thought, and this is all again going on health for Noah Schultz. That's the most paramount aspect of his game right now, is getting the innings, building up the innings base. If he's able to do that, I mean, with the way he's been pitching so far this season, especially in Birmingham, I don't think Jeff's too far off with the possibility of Noah Schultz, like at midseason, let's say, jumping or getting like neck and neck with Colson. And that's not anything, a knock on Colson per se, just on how well Noah Schultz has progressed throughout the whole year.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think it's a matter of innings, right? Like I said this yesterday after Noah, or 2 days ago after Noah Schultz start this weekend. I was like, this is a guy where, like, if he gets 100 innings under his belt this season, even 80 plus innings under his belt this season, like, it's hard not to look at him as a top 20 prospect in baseball. I mean, this guy is, the stuff he's doing in Birmingham is silly. He's young still, right? He's incredibly young. He didn't even pitch that much in Winston. And then he goes up to Birmingham and he just immediately looks like he's up there with the Thorpes and the Iriartes, and at so much younger of an age and so much more of a raw place, and considering the innings he's thrown so far. Like, this is, I mean, there's not, when you look at the top 100, right? Like, I think he ranked as the 5th pitcher on Arm's list, right? Or maybe it was either 5th or 6th among pitchers. Right? He was right behind Cade Horton of the Cubs. There's not many pitchers that you can say have more upside than Noah Schultz. I'm not sure there's any other than Paul Skeens. Is that crazy to say? Like, maybe Jackson Jobe. So I think Jackson Jobe is incredible. He's in the top 5 or top 10. But behind Skeens and maybe Job, is there anybody else with higher upside than Schultz? I don't really think there is, right? This is a 6'9" left-hander who sits 98 right now with one of the best sliders you'll ever see. Like this is a really, really good pitcher. I think 32 is good. I think he's going to be top 25 by the end of the season, if not higher. And then Uriarte is the other thing that stood out to me, right? 52. I know Aram personally, right? And this is a guy, he's been high on Uriarte for a long time, even back when he was with the Padres last season, going into last season even, right? Uriarte is coming together, and the ERA numbers don't look amazing when you stack him against a Drew Thorpe and guys that we're going to mention later, like a Mason Adams and other guys in that rotation, and Schultz, right? But Uriarte is giving up a few runs here and there. The ERA is higher than it should be. His expected numbers are great, and you're seeing him find the command more, right? The control is improving. He's getting better spotting his fastball and his slider in different types of counts. And the strikeout numbers are incredibly high, right? Second in the Southern League in strikeouts right now. So really exciting stuff. These guys being top 100. And then there's guys like, Jacob Gonzalez, who I don't think is that far off of a top 100 spot in the near future, right? So super exciting stuff. We're pumped. It's going to be cool. The next thing I want to get talked to about is two promotions that we heard about last night into today. The first one was Ryan Galanie, who all three of us have been saying this for 3 weeks now. Like Galanie just has no business being in Kannapolis. Like he made that league look like Little League. He had like a 200 WRC plus so far this season in Kannapolis, right? It's silly stuff. He goes to Winston-Salem, will immediately become the 3 or 4 hitter in Winston-Salem. I'm excited to see what he can do, right? Another late round pick who's immediately showing his professional baseball player skills right now. And then George Wolkow, my guy George, who's 18 years old. I think a lot of people expected him to spend most of the season in Arizona, and he, a 150 WRC plus, had a few huge home runs, a bunch of doubles, and is heading to Kannapolis now. Will kind of fill in Galanie's spot as a power hitter in Candy now. So super exciting. Steve, what were your kind of initial reactions on those two promotions?
Like you mentioned, Galanie, long overdue, just from putting together these turning in the farm pieces. He, I believe, is one name I never had to remove for the entire month of May. He just kept hitting. He just didn't stop. Every week it was 1,000 OPS, 1,100, 1,200. It was just stupid production, and he was just proving too good for the level, like you mentioned. He seems to be. He was performing similarly to how Tim Elko was, where he was just mashing down in Canny last year. And just he needed to go up. He needs to be tested more. So this one totally makes sense. And George Wolkow, that's an interesting one. It's nice to now be able to get reliable video on Wolkow, get to watch his at bats, and just kind of get a closer look into him as a player. I know the strikeouts were, that's kind of a thing. He's still a very young, raw prospect, but the size, the power potential, that's stuff to dream on, and it'll be great to see him in an aggressive assignment with Kannapolis, but with full video and cutting clips. Ian's gonna be cutting a lot of Wolkow clips coming up, I can imagine.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
I'm pretty bummed because I live about 20 minutes from Kannapolis' ballpark, and they're on the road the next 2 weeks.
Oh.
Yeah, that's
that would have been nice for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jeff, what did you think about those?
Well, I think we were all surprised, right, that we thought Wolkow would be out in Arizona for the entire year, given his age. But this brings up an interesting point where talent supersedes age. It's kind of the same thing with Noah Schultz, right? He wasn't being tested in Winston-Salem, so they had to send him to Birmingham, even though he's so young. Same thing with Wolkow. He's just a kid, but he's ready for another challenge.
Yeah, and like you said, like Sleepy mentioned, right? Like strikeouts are a little bit high, but at the same time, 8 walks in 15 games, 9 extra base hits in 15 games, stealing some bags, right? This is a 6'7" dude that's already has 4 steals, right? Like that's pretty cool to see. I know he's an athletic guy. He's got some movement, right? So this is a guy who it's just going to be fun. Even if he's not an everyday player in Canny, even if I think he will be for the most part, but it's going to be a slow process, right? This is not a player we're looking at for 2025 or even 2026, right? This is going to be a long-term project, right? But at the same time, like, this is one of the highest upside bats in the entire farm system, and that's just completely undeniable, right? So I'm excited. I'm a big fan of George. He's definitely carries himself with well above his years in terms of just his maturity on the baseball field and off the field as well. So I'm really excited to see what he can do in Canny. Let's dive into May. I'm going to go through the records right now, just where everybody sits. Kind of, this is 2 full months of the minor league season, right? So we're kind of not far off from the halfway point of minor league baseball, and now we kind of get a better scope of what these teams are doing. Charlotte, here we are on June 3rd when we're recording this. Charlotte is 23-33. Birmingham 33-18, and that's after cooling off a little bit. Birmingham was doing even better earlier in the season, right? Winston-Salem is 25-26, and then Kannapolis, after, like we said, an unbelievable month of May, is 31-19 now. Canny leads that league, the Carolina League. So really exciting stuff. We're pumped. And then the ACL White Sox are 8-12, worth mentioning there as well. Definitely some highlights there, some lows as well, but there's been some really fun performances at the ACL. So that leads us into our focus of today, which is all of our players of the month, guys that really just showed out in the month of May. And we just talked about the first one. We don't have to go too far into him, but our hitter of the month for May, our number one hitter of the month, is Ryan Galanie. 350, 437, 602 slash line, fellas. 7 home runs, 30 RBIs, 15 walks in the month of May for Ryan Galanie. As many more RBIs than games played in May for Galanie. I mean, it's just silly numbers, right? Like, we don't have to go too far into it, but like, the dude was just mashing, and he's going to be instantly one of the better hitters in Winston.
Yeah, can't agree more. I think we're all ready to see what he can do in Winston. I think, Steve, I think you're right. Elko was a good comparison.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's a little bit different, right? Because he's not a big-time school guy, right? With Elko, it was like, oh, Elko played in the SEC, like he was dominating high-level competition in college. With Galanie, he's a small school guy. Wofford is not a huge program, right? But it's a program that is consistently churning out talent right now. They were just in the regionals this past week, right? Like, it's a good small program, and the guy is just doing everything he can do. I talked to him last year. You should go check out, everybody listening, go check out James and Ian's interview with him from They Just Talked to Him last week. So even more insight into Galanie, who is just the best hitter in the White Sox system the entire month by a mile, frankly. The second guy we're going to go to, you just mentioned it, Jeff, Tim Elko. Tim Elko, after a rough month in April, last year you saw him get overmatched a bit in the last few weeks of the season once he got to Birmingham. The first month of this year, a little bit more of the same, right? Like he was doing a little too much at the plate. He was overswinging at times. The month of May, 337, 382, 535 for Tim Elko, an OPS over 900, 4 home runs, 19 RBIs, 8 walks. Strikeouts still a little high, 32 strikeouts. That's got to come down. But hitting 337 for a guy with that size and that type of pop, Elko's turning the corner a little bit in Double-A. Sleepy, where are you at with Elko right now? Just your thoughts on him.
Yeah, so with Elko, the important part is, it's the profile with him, right? First base, you got to mash if you want to move up. And he did get off to a bit of a slow start, but, as we mentioned, is evidenced by his stat line. He really picked up. He was awesome through the entire month of May. And given the struggles in the major leagues at the first base or even DH position, I mean, Elko, he's not old. He's 25. So, like, it's, in my eyes, it's theoretically, like, possible that if he keeps performing, like, it's, he might be able to get a sniff, a quick taste of the major leagues if he keeps proving that he can mash the ball. And that's, what does the major league team need? Not to harp on them too much, but nobody can hit. So if he proves that he can, and just as evidenced by he's doing it against the advanced competition, that was the other aspect too, going back to last year, because he's doing it in Canny and Winston, and like, hey, you got to do that. But now that he's doing it in the upper levels, that only helps his case more to bang on the door even louder. I don't know, Jeff, do you have any? You got to see him a bit last year, so.
Yeah, I think, Steve, that's a good point, though, about seeing him in Chicago, because we don't know what roster spots are going to open up at the trade deadline. I mean, if they move Vaughn, then what? So, yeah, he could definitely, everything goes his way, find his way to Chicago this year. He's doing everything he needs to do except hit home runs. But as we know, that ballpark and that league are really tough to hit home runs in. So far, so good.
Yeah, it's been cool to see him kind of figure things out at the Birmingham level, right? That's the hardest kind of adjustment usually is that AA level for most guys. So cool to see him make the adjustments. Talk about a guy making the leap to Birmingham and not only continuing to be successful, but taking his game to an entirely another level when with due promotion, right? Jacob Gonzalez, first round pick last year. We've talked about it a lot, right? Really rough year last year, made a ton of swing adjustments, got himself right this offseason, came into this year, already looked good in Winston, and then has proceeded to just light the league on fire in Birmingham. In Winston in May, prior to the promotion, right? He got promoted on the 20th of May, right? So the first 2/3 of the month, he slashed 290, 366, 435 in Winston with 2 homers, 7 walks, 7 strikeouts, 5 stolen bases. Just really well-rounded, great approach, minimal strikeouts, right? Goes to Birmingham, down the stretch in Birmingham in 10, 11 games, I believe, 362, 415, 511 with a homer, 9 RBIs, 3 walks, 7 strikeouts. Jacob Gonzalez looks like he's knocking on the door to be a top 100 prospect and is, a first round guy, and he's showing that he's a first round guy. Jeff, what is this like? What is it with some of these guys and this leap to Birmingham? Because this is not the first guy in recent memory that I've seen do this, right? Brian Ramos first got to Birmingham, he had some hot days. Wilfred Veras last year, right when he got promoted to Birmingham, he did better than he was doing in Winston. Like, this is almost a trend. Is the team just better? Are the vibes good? Is it exciting? Or is Gonzalez just really coming into his own kind of?
Well, I think the lesson is for us and everyone really is give these guys a little time, be patient with them, let them adjust to life in pro ball. He looks very much like the 16th overall draft pick and everything that the White Sox were hoping he'd be.
Yeah. Sleepy, Jacob.
Yeah, I mean that's and even his defensive, because there was some concern that he was a below average athlete, but he's
Right.
looked the part. He's looked great at shortstop. Even he was splitting time in Birmingham with Brooks Baldwin between second and short, and he looks, more than capable there. And with the revamping of his swing, the mechanics of it, and getting immediate results in both Winston and now in Birmingham, I mean, it's been, everybody kind of looked back at the pick like after, the small sample size of last year. It's like, oh, okay, this doesn't look good. This is bad. But now he's totally the 180, and like it's feasible to think that we'll be seeing him sooner rather than later get a promotion to the big club, because again, there's not really anyone in his way.
Not at all. You're completely right. I think the only person you could say in his way at this point is his own teammate in Brooks Baldwin, right? That's the tricky thing here is you've got 2 guys now that are legit middle infield prospects, and Baldwin has burst onto the scene this year, and it's a great problem to have, right? It's not a problem, right?
Yeah.
Like those 2 both getting reps at short, at second, at third, like let's do it. Like the 2 of them should be playing all over the infield. Yes, Gonzalez is your primary shortstop, but I do want Baldwin still getting some innings at short. I want Gonzalez getting reps at second. I want Gonzalez getting reps at third even, right? Like let's see this. These 2 guys are going to be pieces of the future in the infield, and versatility is only going to help both of them, and playing together is going to give them that opportunity to continue to be versatile, right? Great stuff from Gonzalez. We're pumped. Let's go down to Canny. We've got 3 guys in this loaded Kannapolis lineup. We already mentioned Ryan Galanie, but 3 more guys to mention in this lineup that had huge months, right? Part of that team being so successful. Caden Connor is the first one I want to go to. I got the chance to talk to him a few weeks ago. Great interview, great guy. Just really seems like he's super level-headed, stays in himself, tries to do what he knows he can do, doesn't do too much, right? 327, 385, 481 in the month of May, 3 home runs, 22 RBIs, 11 walks, 3 stolen bases. Another guy, right? Like a smaller, not a huge program in college, right? Stayed home, local guy, right? Like just continued to be good. Very late round pick by the White Sox, right? And is coming into this year and like he just looks better than the guys he's facing, right? Like that's simply to keep it simple, right? Like he just looks like he's older and better of a hitter than what he's facing in Kannapolis, right? I expect Connor to be not far behind Galanie, maybe a few weeks from now, right? Like this is a guy that should also be in Winston pretty soon, right?
Yeah, we talk every week about the minor league log jam, and but you're right. I mean, the White Sox are going to prioritize guys like Galanie and hopefully Caden Connor and get them at bats in Winston-Salem for sure. And interesting, one point about Connor and his batting average for the month of May. I count 9 guys in Kannapolis who hit over 300 in May.
That sounds like it could be possible. That sounds crazy, but also sounds possible.
Right.
Yeah, they were hot, so it makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, would they have a 22-run game, and then would they turn around and have
like 17 or 18, 17? Yeah. Like that. Yeah.
It's a crazy lineup. Caden's just one of those guys. Let's go to one of your favorite guys, Jeff. This is a guy that I know you love to talk about, and I love talking about him too. And I didn't even realize just how good of a month he had until I really looked at the numbers, and I was like, wow, this guy got on base almost half the time he came up to the plate. Riku Nishida, super fun player, right? He's just an electric factory on the field. 315, wait for this on-base percentage, 479 on-base percentage, and a 413 slug, which is hilarious, but it makes perfect sense for Riku. 14 RBIs, 26 walks compared to 15 strikeouts, and 11 stolen bases, right? So this is a guy that is going to work the heck out of the count. He's going to force you to pitch to him in the zone, and then you're going to walk him, and then he's going to steal when he gets on base. So it's such a fun player. Like we've said, it's hard to project his long-term value, and I'm curious to see what will happen when he goes to the next level. But just like Connor, he also should be in Winston in the near-ish future, right?
Steve, what do you think about Rikui? I talk about him every week because he just continues to fascinate me. I'm curious if you've watched him much and what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so from the times that whenever I tune in, I try to flip between the games as much as I can, the minor league ones. And, I mean, Nishida, every time he's on there, his working counts, his evidence, 26 walks in the month of May over, 15 strikeouts is pretty ridiculous. But he's up there. He's just going to grind you to death during the at-bats. It's not even all of the hits that he gets are just these little duck snorts that are just dinking and, diving right over the shortstop's head and, in between. He's got some sneaky pop that he can drive the ball. He has the ability to. I mean, he's not – I don't think he'll project this, lefty Altuve or anything, but he can – put a little oomph behind it. So he's just one of those players that he's smart. He's a smart baseball player. He knows what to do in the box, on the base paths, in the dirt, on the diamond, in the outfield, wherever you put him, he knows what to do. And he's just fun. He's fun to watch.
Yeah.
I think you were talking about his ability to take a lot of pitches and go deep in the counts. We talked to Pat Leland last week, and he told us that there was one game where, what did he say? He saw 39 pitches in that game?
There was 39 pitches and 4 bats, yeah.
Is that insane?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's something that, it might not be a big league piece, right? Let's say Nishida doesn't even make it to the big leagues, right? Having a guy in your lineup, in a minor league lineup, right? Let's say it's in Winston or Birmingham, whichever level he gets to later this season, right? A guy that can set the table and work the heck out of a starting pitcher is going to help the rest of your lineup so much. And I don't think that can be understated, right? Because that's important. If you're getting your leadoff hitter to work a 9-pitch count every single time in the first inning, that is going to set up your middle of your order so incredibly well to produce. Even if he's in your 9 spot, right? You're getting to the top of the order to then just be beaten. The pitcher's already frustrated getting to the top of your order, right? So whatever happens in Nishida's future, super awesome player to have in an organization, regardless of the exact role he ends up playing, because of that just excellent, intelligent plate approach that he has. The last guy is a guy you brought up, Sleepy. I want to let you kind of take the floor on this. Arxie Hernandez, in the month of May, another canny guy, right? Slashing 318, 392, 529 in the month of May. 10 extra base hits, 15 RBIs, 9 walks. Somebody that I don't think we've really talked about all that much, right? Coming off a year last year where he was in rookie ball all season, had a 619 OPS in rookie ball, and that's if you're doing that in rookie ball, there's not all that much expectation for you, right? But it was only 34 games. Turns around this year, 42 games in canny. He looks like a piece right now.
Yeah, and he was one of the more surprising, even when I was, doing the roster and then just seeing him on the list, that he kind of popped up. And, it's been more of a sneaky good, quiet. Because, again, with Canny, you're seeing Galanie going 3 for 5 every night, or Riku Nishida, doing what he's doing at the top of the order, Caden Connor. And he just kind of, Arxie Hernandez, I hope I'm saying the first name right, but he just kind of, slid under the radar and just quietly, as a 20-year-old too, So it's not like he's one of these older players. He wasn't like a college guy. He signed out of the Dominican Republic. So he's young for the level and just quietly adjusting and putting up solid numbers. 10 extra base hits in the month. Like, he was just one of the people that kind of jumped out when I was looking over the top performers of May. I'm like, oh, he's just an interesting guy that kind of caught my attention when I was, doing the trendings and then looking for this specifically. I'm like, oh, this is, and I want to say infielder, I think third base, but still an interesting guy to kind of keep an eye on as the season progresses to see if he can maintain this level of production.
100%. Totally agree with you. It's cool to see that whole lineup, like we said, is so much fun. And a lot of those guys are going to get promotion soon, which when guys like Nishida and Connor go up to Winston, then you're going to get a whole new wave of some of these younger talents that really get to shine. And a guy like Artsy who could spend the whole year in Canny, but might really take a big role in that lineup, right? Going over to pitching, there's a lot of hitters. We've got plenty of other hitters that are doing great right now, honestly. There is, like we say, the pitching depth is top tier. The hitting depth is definitely a step below, but there's some fun hitters. The pitching is ridiculous. I mean, it was hard to even limit this to 5 guys. We probably could talk about 15 guys that had a strong month of May in this farm system. There really is that many good starting pitchers right now. The number one for May is Mason Adams. Mason Adams, I've been harping about this guy since last year, Jeff. You know that. And this is a guy that it's just the staple of consistency. I do not know if there's a more consistent pitcher in the White Sox system or in Double-A, frankly. Like, this is literally one of the most consistent pitchers in all of minor league baseball. Every start, it's like he's soft contact, minimal walks, commanding the zone, limiting his pitch count every single time. In the month of May, Mason Adams, 29 2/3, a .91 ERA, a .81 whip, 29 strikeouts, 6 walks, only 18 total hits allowed in 5 starts made. And then he went out yesterday or 2 days ago, and yesterday actually, and made another 7-inning 1-run start to start June, right? So it's ridiculous stuff. I'm gonna let you guys take the floor because I harp about this guy all the time, but this is a pitching prospect, right? Like, this is not a 13th rounder who is just worth keeping an eye on. Like, this is a real pitching prospect.
Steve?
Yeah. So when Mason Adams, dating back to last year, he started, I believe, piggybacking off Noah Schultz, and and then he was just putting up solid, relief start, however you want to call it. He was just the piggyback guy, but he was putting up multiple innings, pitching well, and then he got bumped into the rotation, kept that up, goes to Winston, kept that up, goes to brief cup of coffee at the end, and then this year it's just been another level. Like, it's just been ridiculous with how well he is able to just command all of his pitches, just throw it wherever he wants, spot it, place it. He's been, for being the gamble of 13th round pick, from working to just like, oh, hey, this is an interesting guy, to he's legit. I mean, I think at mid-season, easily, maybe this is a little off topic, but top 15 easily?
We just had our guy Dylan on last week, and we all just agreed he's in top 15 range. And I was working on my list this week, and I was like, this is a top 15 guy.
Yeah, I think it's harder to make the case why he wouldn't be, because just given, he's doing everything he needs to make himself I am a future piece of this rotation. So, Jeff, what do you think?
Well, I've got a question for you guys, especially Elijah, because I know Elijah's watched him more than either of us, which is, how do you think his game is going to translate to the major leagues?
Yeah, he's going to have to get a little bit – he's going to have to continue to work on the off-speed, right? Because the fastball plays, and it's not an elite fastball, but he's able to move it all over the zone, right? And the curveball is excellent, and he mixes and matches so well, and that's what's so interesting about him. I don't think this is he's not an ace type guy. The numbers right now look amazing. The way he pitches is not going to be a guy that's mowing down major league lineups, but his ability to just use the entire zone is something that so few guys have the confidence and the trust in their stuff to do at the Double-A level. And I think it's going to translate. I really do. I don't think he's an ace, but I think you have to look at him right now as a major league rotation option. And then that's what he is right now. And it's it's going to take some time. I don't think I get he's 24, right? Like, I know he's an older prospect, but I don't think it's going to be like this year he's in the rotation and he's a beast, right? But like, it's just the command is so incredibly good that he's going to find a major league role. I think it'll be as a starter. Even if it's not, though, like his curveball is good enough where you can put him in the pen and he can be nasty out there too. So it's like this is a guy who just knows how to work the zone. He knows how to pitch. Like, that's really what it comes down to. It's not that he has one pitch that's, an 80 grade pitch like Noah Schultz slider, and it's not like he has 99 like Grant Taylor or other guys we're going to mention, right? Like, he just knows how to freaking pitch, man. That's all there is to say. Drew Thorpe is the next one. Talk about consistency. Drew Thorpe is also the staple of consistency. In a month where he was like, I guess May was worse than April for him, technically. Is that? I think so. But that's comparing like amazing to amazing, right? Like
worse.
Right, exactly. 24 innings in May, a 1.50 ERA, 0.92 whip, 21 strikeouts, 9 walks, only 13 hits allowed total in the month of May for Drew Thorpe. The dude just doesn't let anybody hit him. Like, it's really like it's almost comical sometimes to watch at bats against him, where like you think a guy barrels the ball and it's a fly out or it's a ground, like it ends up being a hard ground out, and it's just like there's nobody's hitting him. This is like, why is he a AA, guys? Can somebody answer that, please?
Every week we talk about when are they going to bump Thorpe? When are they going to bump Adams?
Yeah. I think the reason is if like they do want to win the Southern League, at least the first half title, I get keeping them there because, why not? If you want to secure it, why not leave a guy in the rotation? I mean, he's clearly too good for AA. I mean, we can kind of safely say that now at this point, even dating back to what he did last year in the Yankee system in his brief time. But he's too good for that level. If you want to secure this, however important it is to them, this first half, Southern League title, hey, all right, go get it, let him cook there, and then bump him up. I mean, he doesn't need to be there. Like, he's demonstrated it by now.
Yeah, and I think part of it is like I've heard from guys in Birmingham, people I've talked to, right, that they really value keeping this core together, and this team is learning how to win together in Birmingham, and it's really like all the core prospects are there right now, and they're getting that chemistry of working with Edgar Caro, who will be the catcher of the future most likely, right, and getting to kind of gel as a rotation and learn each other's tricks and techniques and timing and routines and everything, right? Like, there's something to be said for that. With most of those guys, I'm okay with that. With Thorpe, I just feel like you're wasting bullets at this point. It's like, this is a guy who just, his arm is, he's just too good. Like, I mean, seriously, like, it's not even, he hasn't even been that dominant, right? Like, the strikeout numbers are down in May in comparison to April, and he still has allowed 13 total hits in 5 starts in May. 13 total hits, guys. I mean, that's like, and that's one game where he got pulled in the first inning after giving up 4 hits, right? So you take out that one start, and he literally just did not get touched the entire month, essentially, right? So it's like, I mean, dating back to, I just pulled this up right now, dating back to last year at the All-Star break, Thorpe has walked more than 2 hitters once, ever. One time he walked more than 2 hitters. It's just, the command is great. The stuff is good. We know the fastball is not amazing, but we also know the changeup and the slider and the cutter are good enough where he's going to get outs and he's going to force you to ground out and he's going to force you to hit little soft contact all the time. Chicago, like, soon, please. I don't even really care about Charlotte. Like, if they want to keep him in Birmingham for a little while, sure. But like, come All-Star break, trade deadline, like, he needs to pitch in Chicago this year. There's really no reason he shouldn't. Like, this is a guy who like should be the number 2 or 3 in the rotation going into 2025, frankly. Absolutely. That's all I got on Thorpe. Moving on to the next guy. We talked to him earlier. We don't have to go super. I mean, we did a little bit, but Noah Schultz, right? Like, this guy's he's special. We know he's special. He's the 32nd ranked prospect, like we talked about in baseball, for a reason right now. 15 1/3 innings in May, 2.35 ERA, 0.72 whip. Like, what is that? 20 strikeouts to 2 walks. 2 walks for Noah Schultz in the month of May. 9 hits allowed total. It's just, I mean, Noah Schultz is the guy that, like we said, if there's anybody in this rotation, in this Birmingham rotation, that you can look at and say, like, no, he's not just a safe floor. Like, that is an ace. It is very obviously Noah Schultz. We know that. We've talked about that many times. But the command is something that I really want to talk about, because that's the thing. Last year, we were like, oh, this guy's stuff is nasty. Strikeout rates are super high. You got to see the command come a little bit. 2 walks in May. 2 walks, has not walked a single batter since being promoted to Birmingham. He's made 2 starts in Birmingham now and has not walked a single batter and has allowed 1 hit in each of his 2 starts in Birmingham.
Is he 20 yet?
He is 20 years old, and he will be 20 years old for a few more months, too. He's not 21 towards the end of the season.
It kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with Wolkow, which is the talent is forcing the White Sox to promote him. And who knows how he's going to do between now and the All-Star break. But if he continues this kind of dominance, I mean, what do you do?
It's the inning thing, right? That's the issue, right? Like you got to build the innings, right? He has not gone over 4 innings once this season, right? So like you got to build that still. He's at a 65 pitch limit. That's what I've been hearing from people. It seems like his limit every start he goes is 65 essentially right now. So you got to see 75, right? 80, 85. Let's see that, right? But like Sleepy, what is your timeline for Schultz? What do you think about that? Because I've been trying to figure this out myself.
I mean, I think for this season, you just kind of keep him on this schedule and just kind of let him cook in Birmingham. Just let him go every Saturday, every 4 innings or 65 pitches. Maybe you start to expand upon that. Like as long as he's showing the health and the throwing programs in between are going well, like maybe you can let him dabble to 75, 80 pitches or 5 innings. Maybe the last couple, I don't know what their plan is, but with his command and like how he's been progressing, like it seems like from what may have seemed like a total like pie in the sky, like he could be a part of the rotation in 2025 in Chicago. Like that seems kind of feasible now, like at the rate that he's going. Again, this is all health dependent. He needs to stay healthy. He needs to pitch. He needs to build the innings, but it doesn't seem unrealistic if he stays on this trend, this pace, that we see him, early next season. Like, because what else if he's just going to consistently mow down hitters? Like, why? I don't think he needs to go to Charlotte. Like, what would that prove? Really, like, I mean, it would be great for Jeff to go and see him again in Charlotte, but otherwise, like, get him to Chicago if he's still mowing people down in Double-A as a 21-year-old. Like, okay, next in 2025, give him a few starts and see what happens.
Yeah, it's really just gonna come down to building up the arm. That's really what it is. Like you said, I mean, he every time he pitches, it's like this guy's better than the hitters he's facing every single time, and that's the given right now. Like it's a given that he's going to mow hitters down. It's just you got to build the innings, right? So we'll see. I don't think there's any rush, right? Like there's so much depth, like you talk about. Like you don't need him to be in your rotation anytime soon, but if he keeps doing what he's doing and he builds the innings, you might have no choice at some point next year, right? So super exciting. Schultz is incredible. I try to watch every single start I can of his just because it's just like beautiful baseball. And I think he's got a bright future ahead of him, obviously, and he's going to be in Birmingham the rest of the season, most likely. 2 more guys that both, are both residing in that incredible Canny rotation. Both, again, another example, there's just too many pitchers almost. Like I don't want to say too many because there can never be too many pitchers, but these guys don't need to be in Kannapolis. Lucas Gordon is the first one, 6th round pick, 22 innings in May, a 1.23 ERA, a .95 whip, 14 strikeouts, 10 walks, only 11 hits allowed. Gordon not going to mow guys down, right? Like he's not the guy that's going to overpower you like the next guy we'll talk about, but he just gets out. He's a veteran guy. He pitched at Texas. He has experience against high-level hitters. Like, this guy pitching in Kannapolis is just silly. It's not like he's just too advanced of a pitcher. I don't think he's like a huge-time prospect because I'm not sure the stuff is necessarily going to play at the highest levels. It might, frankly. It might, and he knows how to pitch. I mean, he really does. But at the end of the day, like, he just should not. It's a waste of time to have him throwing in Kannapolis right now. Like it's just. But where do you put him? I don't know. So Jeff, you've got to see Gordon and talk to him, I believe, as well, right? What do you kind of just? I mean, it's been great all season, yeah.
Yeah, he's been terrific, and he's a very cerebral guy, like a lot of these guys. He really knows what he's doing out there. And I asked him. He said, I pitched at Texas. This isn't very stressful. He's got the confidence to go with his arsenal.
Yeah, definitely. Sleepy, I'll let you take the lead on this next guy, Grant Taylor. Right, this is a guy who, we say with Schultz. Like this is another. Like I was talking to my guy Dylan about this the other day. Like is Grant Taylor the second highest upside arm in this farm system? Like, I don't think that's crazy to say. I really don't. He got to Kannapolis this season and got, after being in the ACL for, did he make one start or even two starts in the ACL? He was very briefly, only made one start, and immediately goes to Kannapolis, right? Like, coming off a TJ, you don't expect guys to look as sharp as Grant Taylor has looked. He's thrown 4 innings in every start, at least he had 7 strikeouts in the ACL, then 7 in his 3 starts in Kannapolis. A total of 7 hits allowed across 3 starts in Kannapolis. Not a single, or one walk in Kannapolis. Grant Taylor looks great.
Yeah, I mean, he's come up and performed. It's, with the White Sox doing what they did with Taylor, similarly to Paulette drafting, he was a bigger helium guy. He would have been behind Skeens in the LSU rotation, but just, needed to get Tommy John. They took the gamble, and I mean, his stuff is playing up from everything that I had, at least read prior to where he's at now. And again, this just might be another case of he's just showing he's too good to be in Kannapolis with the rest of the people in the Kannapolis rotation. And I get slow playing Taylor in this sense of you're still coming back from the injury, so you might as well, just kind of, put your toes in the water, so to speak. But I mean, he's proving that, I mean, the arm is legit. I mean, just the power stuff that he is just unleashing on these hitters. I mean, it's just not fair for the rest of them. And he's definitely, stuff-wise, like one of the, I mean, if you want to put him definitely behind Schultz, but like on a tier with Iriarte in a sense as a starter, like he's got that kind of nasty stuff that you can see really, hopefully continuing to play up and just like anchoring, a future rotation spot.
I couldn't agree more. It's I've seen him pitch a couple of times, and it's so impressive. It's an easy 96 to 99 fastball, some good breaking pitches. Yeah, he needs to move quickly. And I imagine, maybe he'll be on the same track that Schultz was on, just a brief stay in Winston-Salem and then on to Birmingham.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, it's right, like you said, take your time with him, right? Coming off of TJ, like, you don't want to rush this guy. There's no reason to. The depth is there. We don't need to worry about that factor. But at the same time, like, he's just way better than everybody in Kannapolis, and it's probably going to be better than everybody in Winston. Like, this is a guy who was, I don't think people, like, everybody knows this, right? Like, a lot of people know this, right? But, like, he was dominating at LSU. This was the number 2 behind Paul Skeens, like Paul frickin' Skeens. This wasn't like a guy who was just pitching here and there. Like, he was really good, and he was facing the top hitters in the country in college, right? He was looking like a first-round pick before he went down with Tommy John. So, I mean, we know the stuff he's got. I think this is, somebody said this, I forget who said this, pardon me for not giving credit, but somebody said this online the other day, like, he's everything we wanted from Peyton Paulette and then some. That's the reality, right? Like, this is the guy who's coming off of TJ when we drafted him, and now he looks already immediately like a top 10 prospect in the system pretty easily, I think. I was looking at my list, like, there's a chance Grant Taylor's in my top 5, to be honest with you. Like, I'm not sure there's a ton of guys I'd put above him, maybe top 7 at least, right? Like, this is a legit pitcher for sure. That is our main starters. I want to hit on a few relievers here. Relief pitchers do not get a ton of attention, just generally speaking. Like, you're not as a reliever in the minors. Like, there's very few guys. I think Jordan Leisure was an exception, right, when they traded for him, right? But like, Prelina Baroa sort of got some attention, right? But there's not a ton of relievers that are on like the prospect radar often. But there's a few guys that are definitely worth mentioning. Josimar Cusin is someone that I definitely want to touch on here briefly. He was a starter, right? And then he kind of got just bumped purely based on because there's too many guys there, right? There's too many guys in Birmingham that have been good this year in order for, to even have a spot. And that lineup, that rotation's loaded, right? Moves to the bullpen. He just came back and started his season late in April, right? So he's only really pitched in May, right? And in May, Cusin has a 9 innings pitched, a singular 1 ERA. He's given up 1 run in the month of May, only 6 hits allowed and 14 strikeouts for Cusin. He looks really good. I know he's 26, an older guy, right? Only 2 walks, I should mention that as well. He had some command issues as a starter, but the command is dialed in. The stuff is there. He looks sharp. Yeah, he looks aggressive out of that bullpen, right? Like, Cusin should be a bullpen piece in Chicago pretty soon, especially at 26 years old. Like, he transitioned well from a starter, and like, this is a guy that I want to see in Chicago in the bullpen very soon, honestly.
And Am I correct that he is on the 40-man, isn't he? Because if he is, I think it moves him up to the
I
top. Yeah.
think he was and got DFA'd at one point in all those roster
Yes.
moves early this season.
Okay.
So he's not on the 40-man actively, I don't believe. But again, like plenty of guys that will be gone or should be gone in the near future, right? Like that shouldn't be a barrier, you know. But yeah, Sleepy, what do you think from Kusin? Where do you think? Do we think you see him up in maybe August, September?
Yeah, I mean, I think post trade deadline is pretty reasonable. I mean, given you think with the state of the major league team, I mean, they'll sell off whomever to whoever. So you might as well, again, like you said, he's 26, so it's not like you're trying to be protective on a younger prospect. Like, this is a guy you signed out of Cuba last year, and he's taken well to this transition to the bullpen, and stuff seems to be playing up a little bit, knowing that you can kind of air it out for an inning rather than trying to make it last for 5 or 6. So yeah, I mean, I think post trade deadline, excuse me, will definitely be like a reasonable thing, considering how many other pieces are sent out. That's kind of the big thing, is like you're going to need to see the movement up top to have everybody kind of step up the ladder. But I mean, I think, again, why not? It's auditions for 2025, really. It's who wants to take a spot. So,
Exactly.
Guys, who do you think is ahead of him in terms of reliever call-ups to Chicago this year?
I think the guy that I'm about to mention next is ahead of him, and maybe one other. Maybe Frazier Ellard is the other one I could see. I think Ellard has struggled a little bit in Charlotte, though. But then the other guy that I was about to mention is Addison Coffey. I think Coffey's equal, if not maybe half a step ahead of Kusin, just because Coffey's been a reliever already and because he's already in Charlotte now. So maybe Coffey or Ellard. But is there anybody else on that other than that really deserves a promotion before him? I don't think so.
I mean, Caleb Freeman had a case for a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it's not really like that. That's another spot, is for relievers. Like you can generally just kind of find them or just create them. It seems out of thin air, most of the time. So that's why I like the strategy of just kind of getting a big bucket of whatever, even minor league guys and this and that, and just see like, all right, maybe you just tweak a pitch, change this, change that, your placement on the mound, and see what plays up, what works, and you strike gold for a bit. Like they fixed Gregory Santos last year and got some decent value in a draft pick, in a trade. So not saying that that's how all of them will go, but you can kind of do that with reclamation project types. And in the system, maybe some guys at the lower level, once the other people get promoted and then they get the chance to play against the higher competition. I know we're going to touch on a couple here. Maybe that'll kind of help make a clearer picture as who is a legitimate candidate for 2025.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think that's definitely accurate there. And then, there's also the factor that like some of these starters are eventually going to have to be relievers, right? Like not all these guys we talk about in the rotation are going to stick as starters. You only have 5 rotation spots. Even with injuries, you factor in 7, right? Like there's still guys that are going to have to transition to a bullpen role eventually, right? And you've already seen it with Kusin. And then, Addison Coffey, I just mentioned him, 9 innings of no run ball, only 7 hits allowed in this past month in Birmingham, just got promoted to Charlotte. And then you've got 2 other former starters in, Shane Murphy and Andrew Dahlquist, who have both transitioned into more relief roles, Murphy being a piggyback type, Dahlquist being more of a legit reliever in Birmingham. Dahlquist has allowed just 3 hits in 8 innings in May. He looks like a totally different pitcher than he was as a starter. And then a guy like Shane Murphy, who's thrown over 20 innings in May with a 1.33 ERA. I know Jeff's a big fan of him, right? Like there's a lot of guys that are solid. Those 2 are definitely guys I wanted to highlight as former starters. And it's just there's options. There's options in this entire farm system pitching wise.
Yeah. And are we certain that Murphy is going to be a reliever? Because right now he's piggybacking and he's going like 4 innings an outing. And it's pretty dominant.
There's just so many starters. Where do you put him? That's the thing. It's like I think he could be a starter, sure, but like once the spot becomes available in Winston, it has to go to Lucas Gordon or Grant Taylor, right? Like those, you got to prioritize those guys over Murphy. So it's like it's tricky, but like I'm at the point where I almost wouldn't even be shocked if they trade a relief pitcher or prospect or 2 in exchange for hitting at the deadline, right? Like you don't want to trade prospects as a team that's retooling, whatever that means. But at the same time, like there's too many pitchers for rotation spots in the minor leagues right now.
Yeah, I mean, something has to give eventually, right? Because even if you're going to start doing this where you're piggybacking 2 or 3 people in a rotation, so then you have like guys splitting like 4 innings here and there, like it's just going to kind of get muddled. Again, this is a good problem to have and figure out down at the farm, but you want to kind of get a clearer picture. And then, even like you mentioned, you can use some of these pieces to get more offense or more things that you need, even a prospect for prospect swap. Like it's just these are good. These are better situations for a farm system to have, where you have just too much of something that you need, that you can use to get something you actually really need as well. So,
and you can only piggyback so many guys because you've got a lot of guys in these bullpens, and they have to get regular work as well.
Yeah, 100%. 2 more guys I want to briefly mention just in terms of relievers, and then we have a few other small topics to touch on. Nick Altermat was a 17th rounder in 2022, missed all of last season. This is his first professional season in Kannapolis. The month of May, Nick Altermat with 12 and a third, .73, only 4 hits and 15 strikeouts. It's a guy that I heard mentioned by a few different guys in Candy that I've talked to who have said, like, Altermat's kind of like looking like a legit stud in the pen, right? Like right now, this is a college guy, right? Like he played at a small school, Minnesota State, late round pick, but there's a reason the White Sox snagged him. And even though he missed all of last season, like he has been excellent so far this entire year. And then Tommy Vale was an undrafted signing, went to Auburn, played a bunch of seasons there, was very successful at Auburn. In the month of May, Vale had 12 innings, not a single run allowed, 4 hits and 19 strikeouts for Tommy Vale. So those are 2 guys in Canny, right, that are like, they're advanced college guys, like, right, they're older prospects. They really, again, more guys that don't need to be in Kannapolis, right? But there's the logjam, like we keep saying. But both these guys I want to give credit to for excellent months of May out of the bullpen in Candy for sure. And that's all we got in terms of our players of the month. A few things to talk about. I know the first thing I want to talk about is my guy, Sean Burke. Sean Burke has totally fallen. Is it fair to say he's fallen off the radar? I think that's fair, right? He was hurt last year, right? Like this was a guy who was on top 5 to 7 in the White Sox system going into last season, looking like a 2023 big league piece at one point, right? Dealt with some injuries. His numbers suffered because of it. He missed the entire second half of last season. Came into this year in Arizona, rehabbing, working through stuff. He made his first. He was pitching in the complex league and then got bumped up to Charlotte this week for his first start of the season. And what does Sean Burke do in his first start in Charlotte this past week? Just 8 strikeouts in 3 innings. That's pretty ridiculous. 3 walks, right, and give him a run. 3 hits as well in 3 innings. So not perfect from Burke, but 8 strikeouts in 3 innings after the week before throwing 11 strikeouts in 4 innings in Arizona. The stuff is legit for Burke. Jeff, I know you've seen Burke in Charlotte last year a bunch and the year before even. This is a guy who could be in the big leagues this year, right?
It was, I mean, you couldn't have a more impressive return from injury. It was great. And, he's a likable guy. Everybody likes him, and everybody's rooting for him. Speaking of guys that we've kind of forgotten about, another guy is either throwing or is going to start throwing again soon, Davis Martin.
Yep. Also somebody to keep an eye on for sure. Those are 2 guys that were, going to be part of the team last year and had dealt with injuries and all this other stuff, right? But it's exciting, right? Sleepy, did you get to see any of Burke start? And just what do you kind of generally think about Burke coming back now?
So I did not see. I mean, I saw the clips that Ian did cut. I didn't see his start as it was happening. For me, I was always lower on Burke just because of the command issues. Like he would always pile, he seemed good at piling up strikeouts. It was just the walks that would always hurt him, especially when he got to Charlotte. It just seemed to be a problem. Health was also another issue, to where I just thought maybe they should just kind of start transitioning him to a bullpen role that he can, focus more on having the stuff play up a bit and just kind of, air it out for an inning and not have to worry about taking on a starter workload. I think that still could be the path, given the apparent now starting pitching depth that the organization seems to have. But his stuff, like this is what we want to see from Sean Burke. You want to see him come back, get a bunch of strikeouts, have the fastball pump in, the breaker, the breaker really sharp. That's just in staying healthy. Like, I mean, he's been derailed, with an injury here, injury there. That's just, as long as he can stay on the field, pitch, and just have the natural ability he has, just kind of work for him. I mean, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't, see him with the club here, sooner rather than later, if the health and everything continues to show that he's ready.
Yeah, and the interesting with Burke too, like you mentioned that it was a little bit concerning always because of the command, but like back then it was like, oh, we need this guy to be a starter.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need Sean Burke to be a starter. The White Sox don't need Sean Burke to start games, right? Like there's so many guys ready to start games. If Sean Burke's stuff is that good and you're trying to preserve his health and also negate the command issues, make him a bullpen guy. That's an elite. I mean, Sean Burke could be a stud in the bullpen. When you look at the way his curveball works and the way he's able to kind of, mix up his stuff, like that could be a bullpen beast, right? He could be a setup guy. Like he could be a setup guy. He could be a long relief guy that can go 2-3 innings and get you a few solid innings with some strikeouts, right? Like there's so many options and there's so many pitchers that you don't have to feel the pressure of making him a starter. So if you want to bring him up and preserve his arm and all these other things, put him in the bullpen and see if he can earn a long-term bullpen role going into next season, right? Because this is a major league type of arm, I'm excited for Burke. He's a great dude. Another interview that you can go check out. I did that with him a few weeks ago, kind of just checking in on his rehab early at the beginning of the season. He seems like he's really progressing well. He feels good. His arm feels good. He was telling me that the other day. So cool stuff. Happy to see him back on the mound. I want to let you just kind of highlight the Kannapolis team here for a second, Jeff. We've been talking about this all episode, but this episode is about, May, right? The month of May. Tell me just how incredible Kannapolis was in May.
Let me just quickly share some stats for the month. They were 17-8, but they were even better than that. As a team, they hit 291, 388, 417. That's the slash line. They struck out 219 times, but that's the fifth lowest in the league. They had the second. They hit 17 home runs. That was fourth most in the league. It was just as dominating on the pitching side. They had a 2.91 ERA. They gave up the third fewest hits for the month. They were near the bottom in walks and had the seventh most strikeouts, second lowest WHIP, second lowest batting average against at 215. I mean, just dominating on both sides of the ball, and it's amazing they didn't win more than 17.
Yeah, honestly, that was a heck of a month from Canny. Anybody else on that roster, either of you guys want to just mention briefly in terms of specific players? I know there was a few other guys that have had really good months there as well.
I would just point out, you and I talked to Pat, and he was pretty enthusiastic about Ronnie Hernandez, and it looks like he's starting to hit now. So that's somebody to keep an eye on.
A little bit of a slow month for him, right? But like that's a super young catcher. He's learning how to catch at the high levels. He's catching high level college arms, right? Like we're talking about like Taylor and Gordon and Seth Keener is another one that's worth mentioning for sure. I know Sleepy big on Seth Keener as well, but Hernandez is a great guy. Like he's going to get there, and it's cool for him to be at that level and be able to just be the catcher there all season and catcher DH, right? Kind of mixing it up, right? But like learn how to catch for the season while also progressing with the bat. Sleepy, what about Keener? Kind of anything jump out to you from this past month of watching him?
Yeah, I mean, with Seth Keener, he's just another one of these, solid arms that have been locking down the Canny rotation. He had one abbreviated start in May, but otherwise, 19 innings, 19 strikeouts, 3.79 ERA, 1.11 WHIP. He's a reliable starter. He does flash the good command, good stuff from times. He's just a guy that kind of jumped out to me that I know he was transitioned. I believe he was a reliever at Wake, and then they transitioned him to starting. So this is kind of like a foray back into the rotation. So some hiccups I imagine are to be expected, but he's just another interesting live arm that that the Sox have been stockpiling here.
Yeah, 100%. There's so many of those arms. So we keep saying so many of those arms. Anything else you guys want to touch on? I think we gave a good synopsis of May. This was a good month. Like we keep saying, this farm system is fun. It's really a lot of fun right now for White Sox fans that are just continually discouraged by the major league team. Like you can watch on that MILB TV through MLB TV now. Like tune into some of these games, especially Kannapolis and Birmingham. I can't encourage you enough to go watch those two teams. There is just a ridiculous amount of talent on the the mound, the lineups, everything between those two rosters for sure right now.
Guys, I've got a great way to end the show. Let's each predict the next promotion.
Major league promotion?
No. Just in the minor leagues from one level to the next.
That's tough. I got to think.
Do you have somebody in mind, Jeff? Why don't you kick it
I
off?
really don't, to be honest. I'm thinking, maybe Batista. Maybe he's ready to go to Winston.
Batista, I would love to see Batista, but I don't think you can put Batista above a Gordon because of the experience level and just the age kind of. So I don't know. Maybe it is, but I think that's tough, man. There's so many guys. It should be Thorpe, right? Like that should be the answer. I don't think it will be, but it should be. I kind of want to go like Caden Connor maybe or Riku Nishida, one of those two. I think that's where I would lean just because I think there's room in that Winston lineup for more hitters as opposed to the rotations, which are so log jammed. I think I'll go Connor.
Sleepy, you got any ideas? Anything come to mind?
Let's see. I was trying to think.
I'm sorry to put you guys on the spot.
No, that works. I was trying to think of something that's not like totally just like a safe pick, because I think like you could just shuffle up a reliever from Canny to Winston. Like I think Tommy Vale probably deserves to like get the bump up after the month he had. But maybe that's not as fun of a
No, that's good. I think Vale or Altermat definitely could.
Yeah, so I mean, I think like that's as like a logical step up where they put somebody on the development list, or like if somebody has an injury, they can just boost them right up, and I mean, it's not like they don't deserve it either, too. So I think those would be, Tommy Vale, Ultimate. I think those guys make a lot of sense as promotions, but not quite the big name draw like when we had Schultz and Gonzalez and everybody else go up at once.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Sleepy. This was a pleasure to have you on. We will definitely have you back. Everybody make sure you go check out at Sleepy_Harold_ on X, where he, does trending on the farm every week, which is a great way to learn about the farm system and a good synopsis. Other White Sox content as well. We'll have draft previews coming up for the MLB draft at FutureSox. We've got some cool interviews coming up, plenty of other stuff on the way. And we hope you all continue to listen in every week. So thanks again, Steve, for coming on, and Jeff as well, per usual.
Sounds great. Yeah, appreciate it, Steve. Nice to meet you in person.
Yes, you too, Jeff. And thank you guys for having me.